Well, hello everyone. I can't see you all, but I can see there's a whole list of names down the bottom of my screen, and it's this rather bizarre world of I know you're listening, I know I'm talking, but I don't know what's going on in between. So hey ho, but it's really great. And for me to get to Greenwich, I live in by Kew Gardens. It takes me 2 hours, so it's a 4-hour round trip, and I know you all empathise with this. And I can actually now do this sitting from my flat in London, or indeed wherever I am in the world, and I can put a screenshot behind to remind me that I do belong to Greenwich. And actually, I can deliver something to you. I hope that you'll find really useful. Just to say, I know there's a second session next week, so this one is designed to flow into the next one as well. And I will be setting you something to do. So my name's Chris Birch. I'm Professor of Enterprise Innovation. I've been at Greenwich since 2008, when I came to set up what was then the I3 Centre, the Centre for Innovation, Imagination and Inspiration. And my vision was always to try to get students to think entrepreneurially, be it green or be it social, be it commercial. It's about a mindset. So I've just got my little grandson coming to say bye-bye to me. Hello, see you later.
Bye, see you tomorrow.
Here he is. I'll just say hello to them all, Sam. There we are. Say hello. Okay, see you later. Sorry about that all. That's the disadvantage of being at home. So the purpose was to work with students to try to inspire them to do things differently in a world where I saw very quickly was going to change from employment to self-employment to portfolio jobs to doing different things in different ways.
Come on then.
So I've still got Sam saying bye-bye to everyone, saying bye-bye to all his animals. And it's about entrepreneurship is about mindset. Many people can be entrepreneurial without being business students, and one of the great joys, I set up the business planning competition, and one of the great joys in the early days was it engaged with people across the university, and that was what I wanted to do, and that's what I hope I'm doing now. And people, for example, in engineering are very good at product development and product design, and people in business are very good at designing processes and other business solutions. And I think sometimes we need to play on different strengths, because there's different sorts of entrepreneurs. There's those that change the processes, and there's those that change the products. There's those that can mold those two things together as well. So all I want to do is to talk to you about a few things. And if you've got a dream or idea, and if you want to make the world a better place, it's one thing to have the dream, it's another to turn that dream into reality. And I thought a while ago with social entrepreneurship that often social entrepreneurs came from without the business area. You didn't have the language of business, you didn't have the knowledge of basic business disciplines, so you didn't quite know how to turn that fantastic idea that could make a very big difference to very many people into a business proposition. And the purpose of my session today is to start that journey, to say, let's develop the idea, let's think it through, and then next week we'll talk about how we actually turn it into a business proposition. You'll see the title of this session is called Profit for Purpose. And I've very deliberately chosen that because you'll see in a later slide, one of the phrases I really, really hate is not for profit. Often social enterprises are referred to as not-for-profit businesses, and I just think that sends the wrong message for reasons that I'll make clear in a minute. I want you to run viable, sustainable, profitable businesses where you use the profit that you make to deliver and develop the dream that you have, and I don't think you can do one without the other. So a couple of just very quick macroeconomic perspectives, and bear in mind when I've done this, I've put it together with a view that you might not know very much about economics or anything else. Some of you may know a lot more, and if you do, you can just have a deeper think about what I'm saying. But for some of you, this may be the first time you've seen some of these things. So we've got different types of economy around the world. And we have what we would all identify as the capitalistic free markets, where entrepreneurs see gaps in the market, they set businesses up, they deliver products and services, they sell them for a profit, and then they can turn that profit into Ferraris or Rolls Royces or whatever they want to do with it. Another type of economy are the more straight state-controlled markets. So, you know, the old communist bloc countries, Russia, China, a lot of the satellite Russian countries are also state-controlled. Vietnam, for example, is a democracy, but only one party ever stands. So it's still quite a communistic state. And they just have a different view of the world. I'm not judging one to be better than the other. There's two different ways of thinking. You've got the state taking control, you've got individuals taking control. And in the middle, of course, you've got a bit of a mix of the two. And indeed, in the UK, I think that we are fundamentally a capitalist free market, but where we get market failure, the state takes over. And we're seeing that frequently now with COVID. So the state does have a role to play. In the UK and America too, it tends to be a small role until it needs to be a big role. And as I say, that now is a very, very good and atypical example of where the state is having to play a massive role to try to keep businesses afloat until we sort this damn virus out. So with the capitalist free market, we associate entrepreneurs with that, and I'll talk a little bit about entrepreneurs in a moment. With state enterprise, it's about the party running the economy and deciding what's done, how and when. And on the in-between, it can be a combination of the state and entrepreneurs. And let me say, one of the best examples of that is now China, because China has very quickly moved from being a communist to being a quasi-capitalist economy. So the state controls the framework, but individuals are allowed to operate within it. So that is quite now a mixed economy. And just this continuum at the bottom. So on the left-hand side, you've got what I call commercial entrepreneurs going leftwards, and you've got social entrepreneurs moving rightwards. And in the middle of it all is creative people, coming back to that theme in a minute. Commercial entrepreneurs tend to be money motivated, whereas social entrepreneurs tend to be mission motivated, wanting to make a difference, wanting to make the world a better place. And in between, on that continuum, in between, there's lots of shades of grey. So you don't have to be at either end. You can be somewhere in the middle. So my next slide is about asking the question, what is an entrepreneur? And if I were in a lecture theatre, I would ask you to be throwing me some words out. And you would say things like risk takers, you'd say things like they're inspired, they are, some would say they're ruthless, you might say they're money oriented, you might say they want to make a difference, you might say they're opportunistic. There's a whole load of words that you will associate with the term entrepreneur. And the actual literal term, out of interest, it's a French word, and it stands for an undertaker, not as in the graveyard sense, but somebody who brokers business. So the original word entrepreneur was about a business broker. The guy on the right is a guy called Joseph Schumpeter, and he is regarded as the father of entrepreneurism. If you read an economics textbook, page 1, chapter 1, paragraph 1, sentence 1, we'll talk about the three basic principles. The fundamental principles of economics are around land, labour and capital. So to make economics work, you've got those three basic ingredients and you turn them into value. What Joseph Schumpeter's contribution to this debate was, he said, actually, of themselves, those three things are no use at all. And what you need are people in the middle that he called entrepreneurs who actually shape those things into different forms to solve problems in different ways. So Schumpeter's fourth factor of production was entrepreneurs. And I would really like economics textbooks to actually ditch the three factors of production and now to have as a default position the four factors of production, which includes his entrepreneurs, because you can have as much land and as much labour and as much capital as you want without somebody moulding it into some form and shape. It has no purpose and meaning. And that's the bit that I want you to be. The entrepreneurs turn land, labour and capital into actions to do things with it. And what Schumpeter talked about was creative destruction through innovation. So if I give the example of, when I wrote my thesis back in 1980, I had to use an electric typewriter. Now, by this time, the electric typewriter had already taken over manual typewriters, but nobody would now use an electric typewriter because we've got word processors. They're just better. So the electric typewriter industry got made defunct overnight as soon as Word, and it used to be Word Perfect, and it was there was a variety of DOS-based Word programs that meant you could process and change as you go along. And just going back to my thesis, the nightmare was if you made a mistake, you had to retype a page or a whole chapter. You couldn't just go back and change one word, a spelling mistake or a typo or whatever. You had to do the whole damn lot, and you can't imagine how painful that was. So entrepreneurs, they have a new idea, they turn it into something, and what that probably means is it gets rid of something else, it displaces something to replace it because it's better. And I know that you're all interested in social entrepreneurships, but the principle remains. You've got to ask yourself the question, what is it that's innovative that you're adding to what's already there, or indeed what's not there? And if it's not there, then you will be innovative because it's not been there. But if there's something there that's not quite working, then you will do something to make it different and to make it work. And innovation is the key tool of the entrepreneur. So in your mindsets, I want you all to be thinking about, what is it that makes my product or service or idea a little bit different, a little bit innovative? And if it doesn't do that, you've then got to ask the question, well, why would anyone want to use it? Why is it better than something that's there? So just now teasing out what is a social enterprise, and again, I'll let you read that for yourselves. If I can pick out the bit whose surpluses are principally reinvested for the purpose of the business or the community. So for the word surpluses, you could be thinking profits. So what this is inferring is that it's perfectly reasonable to make a profit. Some social entrepreneurs think profit is a dirty word, and I just want to unpick that, because if you can't make a profit, you can't really do what you want to do. So you've got to come up with a business plan that is profitable, and then you can reinvest that profit into further developing your idea, having more reach, helping more people, or whatever. So that's it. My take is this: it's a value-adding entity, often operating in areas of market failure, which is future sustainable and viable. And the bit that I quite like is measured by bottom line metrics. So we're not just going to measure the impact and the value of a company by its profit, but also about what difference it makes to the people it's working with. And you write those metrics into your business plan. So you're helping people, you're feeding people, you're then stopping them having to use the health service as much. And therefore, although that doesn't show as profit on your balance sheet, it's clearly got added societal value. So you need to think a little bit in money terms, but also in what else. You're not doing it to make money, you're doing it to make a difference. And the profit needs to be a little bit of a resultant. The profit comes because you're doing the right things. You then reinvest that profit to do more of the right things. I hope that makes sense. So, one of the tasks that I want to just ask you, I want you all, when I finished here, just to write down a sentence or two about how you would define a social entrepreneur. How would you define yourself? Put it that way. Now then, I mentioned earlier, I don't like the phrase not for profit. And I just want you to think for 10 seconds, why do you think I don't like that phrase? At one level, if you're a social enterprise, it's very plausible to say, oh, we're not in it for profit. That absolutely makes sense. But I think a social enterprise must be sustainable, because if it isn't, you create many vulnerable losers. Many of you will be mission driven. You want to make a difference to the lives of people, and you want to make the world a nicer and better place to live in. You want it to be a fairer world. All very, very laudable aspirations. Just supposing that you find a vulnerable group of children, for example, that you organise something for to make their lives better. Their lives are difficult. You're trying to, what the politicians now call, level up a bit. And you set a social enterprise up to support them, for example, with an after-school club to help them. It helps their parents with childcare. It helps them to learn. What happens if you run out of money and you can no longer sustain that after school club. Those kids who have put their faith and trust in someone like yourself, you suddenly say, we can't do it anymore, we've got no more money. They won't understand that. All they understand is what they really liked is no longer there. In some respects, that's worse than not having done it in the first place. So I want all of you to think, actually, you've got more responsibility than a commercial entrepreneur to remain sustainable, because you're working with vulnerable people who come to rely on you. And if you take that support away, you're creating many big problems. And an example in point would be Camilla Batman-Jella's The Kids Company was a very good example of a social enterprise that went very pear-shaped, lots of problems with it, but a whole lot of people found that the kids company that they'd come to rely on suddenly was no longer there. And it was because it was badly run as a business, is the bottom line on that. You can read it up for yourselves. So I want you to have uppermost in your mind profit for purpose. I want you to love making some profit, not ripping people off, but doing things profitably so that you can reinvest that profit to do even more of what you really want to do and make an even bigger difference on the lives of even more people. So the Social Enterprise Challenge is based around the Social Enterprise Canvas. And if I can just say a few words about this, when I first started the Social Enterprise Challenge, I don't know, 7 years ago, I guess this started now, we asked students to prepare a business plan. And about 5 years later, I realised I was actually asking you to do the wrong things. Not in the long term, you need to do it, but I was asking you to run before you could walk. So what we went back to is the Social Enterprise Canvas, which effectively helps you to map out your initial ideas. And for the competition, what you've got to do is to base your application around this canvas, of which there are 8 or 9 segments. And I'm going to come back to this later. It looks like that. And in each section, there's a keyword, value proposition, for example, and it gives you a little description underneath of what that is. The idea of the canvas is that what I would do is probably, and I would do this on paper, you can do it electronically, but funnily enough, and I'm a very digital person, but this is one of the things I'd rather do, I would stick 4, 6 or 8 pieces of A4 together with sellotape on a really big canvas. I'd section it off and I'd start putting post-its in it about things. So use post-its to put on your canvas to build it up. And the beauty of a post-it is you put a word on it or a short phrase, you can move it around. And it might even be that some of the post-its you need to duplicate between different things. So what you're suddenly painting me is a picture of post-its that are relating to each of these segments. And what you're building up is a story of what your idea is. And you will start to be able to, if somebody says to you, what's your idea? You will suddenly be able to articulate that idea much more clearly, much more eloquently, because you've got your head around the key concepts of what it's all about. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm coming back to the canvas later. Now, I've used, so innovation creates opportunities. We've alluded to that. The very first thing I want you to think about, and I actually don't particularly like the word market here, but I can't think of a better one, but it's your target user group. Now, to define a disadvantaged group as a market is not very eloquent, but I see here as a market, a group of people, and what you're doing is linking would-be users and beneficiaries with the service and the product that you want to offer. So the target market is, who is it you're aiming this at? And that needs to be as tight and as tight and as focused as it possibly can. And everyone wants to change the world overnight. And let me tell you, Rome was never built in a day. You make a difference, slowly catch a monkey. You know, how do you eat an elephant? You eat an elephant in pieces. You build your business in pieces. So first of all, identify a very niche, tight market group of people that you want to identify. And you need to be very clear in your mind what the definitions and the parameters of that group are. You need to be able to describe clearly. It might even be down to the names of people about who it is you want to work with and benefit. Later on, you can expand that. this is what goes on in people's minds. So you've then got to understand, what is it when you've identified your product or service and what you want to do, and you've identified who you want to work with. How are they going to see it? And the point of this graphic is, you need to try to see the world through the eyes of the user. Don't see it through the eyes of yourself. You're the one that's making the provision, but you need to understand where they're coming from. Because if you don't understand where they're coming from, you probably won't be able to get to them properly and effectively. So put yourself in their shoes. And the key to that is to focus on the benefits of what you're doing. It's not, at the end of the day, a product or a service it's not the product or the service that really matters. It's what difference it makes. It's what improvements it makes to people's lives. And the question I always ask is, what are the benefits that you're providing? And if you can focus on the benefits that you're providing and be very, very clear with that, then you can get back into the mind of the person that would use it. So the benefits may well be, we're going to give somebody an evening meal once a day, and we know they're hungry. So, the benefit will be, they will be fed and they will be healthier and they will be happier because of that. That's fine. Then you have to ask the questions, where do you do it? How do you get the meals to them? There's all the operational questions that come from it. You also need, and again, this is marketing jargon, that is to make a point, but I make it humbly. It's about unique selling propositions, but the word selling is possibly not one I really like to use here. But it's about making what you're offering to these people something that's different to anything else they can get somewhere else. So they may be able to get food, but they perhaps can't get hot food. They perhaps can't get vegetarian food. So there's a whole load of things you can do to make what you offer unique and useful to the person that you're trying to support. Okay, so just a few thoughts here. This is one of my more creative slides. So there's a children's hand, and they're doing prints as I do with my grandchildren. And first of all, what I want you to all be is clever, and clever in the sense that you understand what you want to do and a little bit about how you're going to do it. I want you to be critical, because it's one thing to have an idea. You need to evaluate that idea in a critical manner, because just because you think it's a good idea doesn't necessarily mean it is a good idea. So get critical comment on what you're doing, both from users and from other providers, just to make sure that what you're doing is as good as you think it is. You need to be absolutely confident in what you're doing, and I'll tell you now, you will get confidence if you do the things that we're talking now. You'll be confident because you know what you're doing. We all know we can blag our way through things, but actually when we're at our best, it's when we're confident that we know what we're doing, we know why we're doing it, and we know how we're going to do it, and we know when we're going to do it. If you've got those things, you will be confident because you know how it all works. We need to be curious, and I say that because curiosity is what drives innovation and doing things differently. And I don't want you all to be doing something that everyone else does. I want you can take an existing idea, but I would want you to make it a little bit different, to tweak it, to make it more useful to the people that you're addressing. And of course, and linked to that is creativity. And one of the things I fear education does is to make clever people less creative. And one of my missions in life now as an older person is to encourage you to be creative. And one of the things I've always been very good at is not conforming. I hate conformity, not for non-conformity's sake, but because if you believe that what's always been done is the best thing, then you will never move forward. And Albert Einstein said, if you do what you've always done, you get what you've always got. And by doing what you've always got doesn't solve the problems, then if you just conform, you're not going to change that. So by definition, one of my most important definitions of an entrepreneur is they're almost always not conformist. They don't just accept things that they see as that's the way it is. They see those things and they think of better ways of doing it, or they see gaps where things aren't being done that they think should be done. And I hope that resonates with you all. And by the way, these slides will be available to all of you in some means or form, and you can use them and do as you wish with them. I also want you to be imaginative. I talked about my I3 centre, and a little story. I wanted my centre to be called the Centre of Imagination, Inspiration and Innovation. And the marketing people didn't like it because they thought it sounded like a drug factory, I think. They preferred having innovation first, and I just thought it wasn't a battle worth fighting. However, I say this to you, nobody ever innovates anything without first imagining something. So I think imagination comes right at the front of the thing. I want you to imagine how the world could be, and I want you to imagine the role that you can play in making it that way. I want you to inspire others. You know, I put the word inspire in my label because leadership, to me, if you ask me about the defining attribute of leadership, it's about inspiring others. As an individual, if you only work as an individual, you have limited influence. If you can inspire others, you can cascade. So I think all of you need to think about, how do I inspire others to come and help me, to support me, to donate to me, to play a part in the project I'm doing, and that will be one of your the key things that you need to do. And as clever people, you can all do it as well. A little bit of ingenious. Sometimes there's no easy solution, so you have to find workarounds. And almost all entrepreneurs don't just suddenly come up with something brilliant. Bill Gates said, you know, he tried things that didn't work, he learned from it, and he tried something else. And I think all of us, we're ingenious in that we see the problem and we find really creative ways of solving that problem through ingenuity. We're inventive. The difference between invention and invention is rare, and it's something that's never been done before, and it's very difficult to do. I don't expect any of you to invent, but it's important. And a spin-off is innovation, and that's where you can take existing ways of doing things and adapt and adjust them to work in different ways. So that's innovating based on something that's already there. And that is the space I think all of you will be in. The people that tend to be in the inventive space are engineers. They find out inventions to do something with something metal or whatever that hasn't been done before. For most people, that is what you're going to be doing, is innovating very often service solutions, I think. And it's all about ideas. And again, I remember a conversation I had with one of my old vice chancellors. I at the time was a deputy vice chancellor, and I don't think he ever really understood what I was doing. And he said, well, Chris, what do you do? I don't understand. I said, well, Peter, I have ideas. And he fell off the chair. That's not your purpose. That absolutely is my purpose, because I have ideas and I turn them into something that's different. So 23 years ago, I had ideas about using technology to lecture students like we're doing now, and everyone thought I was mad. Wind the clock forward, here we are at 6 o'clock online. Some of you could be on Mars for all I know, and we're having a lecture. It's a little bit of a one-way thing, but you will go away and talk about it. And what I'd really love to do at some point is just have an online cafe where we can hear about your ideas as well. That's something else I'm sure that will be done in through the Generator Centre. Okay. So I'm not going to spend long on this slide. One of my entrepreneurial attributes is, in order to do the things that I like to do and want to do, I raise money. I raise research and enterprise funds so that I can do interesting things. And if you bring the money in, nobody says you can't do it. So my priority is not doing research, that comes out of it. My priority is to see something I want to do, to work out how I can get it funded, and then to use that to add value in other ways later, as I'm going to show you here now. So we set this project up called SuNSE.eu, and SuNSE stands for Support Network for Social Entrepreneurs. What we found across Northern Europe was there was no social entrepreneurs network, and there was no support for social entrepreneurs who want to set up a socially enterprising business. So we set about tackling that problem. And in terms of our target group, we were working in 9 geographically and or socially isolated regions. They were regions characterised by having much lower gross domestic product per head of population than the countries they're in. They tended to be very isolated. And if I just show you this one up here, that is in Sutherland. So this is Inverness there. Sutherland is in this northern part. And if I tell you there, that is an enormous area of land, and there's about 6,000 people live in it. And it's where the oil industry is based in this part of Scotland. But there's a few farmers, there's a few crofters, there's nothing else. There's a lot of trees, there's lots of red squirrels, there's a lot of pine martens, there's a lot of birds, but there's not many people. But there are some communities up there, And those communities have the needs of any community, but because they're small, there's no market. So the normal market mechanisms don't work there. So therefore, if they want to be able to do things, they need to do things differently. So we're setting up a lot of social enterprise companies up here. Funnily enough, we're using the internet to actually enable them to sell some of the stuff they make all around our partners. So that's one of the things we're doing. And you can see the outputs. This project was we got €3 million between us to do this project, and we've got to create a new support network, a toolkit to help people, which I'm going to go on to in a minute. We've got to create 70 new social enterprises, of which I hope some of you might become this. We've got to support 300 individuals building canvases, as you're going to see in a moment. And again, I hope some of you become part of that. And we will also be giving face-to-face support. Now, of course, when we wrote this bid, we didn't have COVID. So face-to-face support is now digitised support. But interestingly, this project is perfectly positioned because we're doing things, because we're working in geographically isolated regions. We've put technology at the heart of what we do. So for us to make the transformation from place to space has actually been very easy. And I'm going to tell you next week about we're going to create a social. The network was going to be a physical network based around the powerhouse and similar hubs around our partners. But what we're now going to do is to create a virtual network to sit on top of the physical network, where people will meet online and they can talk ideas through with each other, and hopefully that will sustain well beyond the project. So again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but our research to underpin this bid showed that there's a massive demand for social entrepreneurship, and there's a lack of understanding about how to do it, and that includes by policymakers. We know, and again, it's become evident through the COVID pandemic, that we've got these areas where already there was deprivation, and because of COVID, that deprivation has only gone one way, and that's worse. And when you're in isolated areas, it's an even bigger problem. So our target groups were geographic and socially deprived areas. We knew that to access them, we couldn't do things like we've always done them. We couldn't use lecture theatres, and we couldn't do face-to-face because travel distances were just too far, and people didn't have cars, and public transport wasn't like it is in London. So what we decided to do was to focus our efforts on digital delivery, and specifically to that, and again, a USP is I didn't even base my concept on laptops. It works brilliantly on laptops, but actually I worked on smartphones, because the reason being everyone's got a smartphone, and if they haven't, we can get them one. Also, smartphones use 4G, and in areas where Wi-Fi might be iffy, we can use both satellite and/or 4G technology to get the bandwidth we need out to them. So smartphones, when we spec the website, if you actually use the website we're going to look at in a minute, you will find it scales and works beautifully on your smartphones. So when you're traveling somewhere, you can put your headphones in and you can listen to the videos that are there. I absolutely wanted it. I know people have very complex, you've seen me, I have to double up at the moment. My two children are both key workers. My daughter teaches at Greenwich, my son's a teacher, his partner's a social worker. They're busy, they're really, really busy. And we're having to look after the children because the nurseries aren't open, or they get closed because there's COVID in them. So we're having to do that. If I was studying, that would have to be parked. And I know that reflects the lives of so many people. They're too busy to have a routine if they can study at this time. So one of the things we determined was what I called my A5 model. It would be any time, any place, any pace. It would be easily accessible and affordable. And by affordable, I mean free. So that is the model that we work, and we've created both online content. We've also created offline content. We've got help and advice and support built in, now done digitally. And we're now going to set up this Social Enterprise Academy as well online that you will be able to join in with, I hope, later in February. We're going to be running that. The model is not to use text. I'm very keen to move away from text. We make reference to online text-based materials if you want to use them. But what we've decided to do on this is to use short video content, again, recorded on our phones. I don't want fancy studios. I want people to use what they've got in their pockets to do their recordings. And then we use those recordings on this. And later on, I'll get to that in a minute. We've put it on a YouTube channel because YouTube offers a fantastic auto-translate facility. And what that means is that we can do this in 40 languages without any translation, and it's 95% accurate. So our reach is going to be huge. If people are working in a second language, and anyone in their native language talks too fast, what they can do on YouTube is slow it down, and it sounds a bit like robotic, but they can follow it. And you know what? That works quite well. So they're in control of when they watch it, how they watch it, and they can tailor it to their own needs. And one of the interesting things I do, I'm learning French. So what I do is when I watch them, I put French subtitles on. So I can actually learn another, or help to learn another language at the same time. So there's another spin-off. And every video is supported by an ongoing practical activity. And the purpose of this activity is that you do something that goes onto your canvas. Okay, so the activity will be a very specific thing, and it will create you one or two post-its that you can position on that canvas that we talked about in a moment, which I'm coming back to. What I'm really, really interested in doing is to start this off, we've had to use experts and academics to do the content, but my dream, my personal dream, is to create this as a learning wiki. And as you guys start to build your own social enterprises, I want you to use your camera phones to capture what you're doing, to send it to me. I will curate it and I will put it onto this toolkit so that other people can share your own experiences. And that's part of the dynamic network that I want to create. So I talk about the power of co-creation, and I no longer believe that I own all the knowledge. I obviously know quite a lot, but what I really love is seeing students doing things I've never thought of. And that's what really sparks me. And I hope that all of you can come up with something. I think, oh my God, why didn't I think of that? That is brilliant. We can share it on this channel. It gives you some publicity as well, which again, we're going to talk about next week. And I think that the use of video material in terms of promoting your social enterprises is going to be so important. And it's cheap, or it costs nothing. So if you can create content on your phones with a simple bit of editing or not, you can actually start to create some really dynamic materials that will help you to promote better your business. And of course, the other beauty of anything online is literally we can change things quickly and easily. So this doesn't become a static wiki. It becomes a very dynamic wiki. Things are added, things are changed, things are taken off over time. I'm not going to allow this site to be a free-for-all. It will be curated, but because I want to make sure the quality of the material and the efficacy of the material going on is okay. But I'm not somebody who wants to censor anything. It's not about censorship. It's just about trying to maintain a site that's managed so it doesn't run out of control, because you all know what happens when that happens. So here, just as a simple phrase, really, I worked when I was at Staffordshire University with one of my team was a professor of holistic design, and I'd never even thought of this, but he said, Chris, everything's designed. He said business ideas are designed, spreadsheets are designed, everything has design in it. And one of the messages that I took in and I want to share with you is I want you to think in terms of design. How are you going to design a product or a service that works effectively and well? That will involve creativity, understanding of where your market's going to be, imagination, and the sum of those is the value that you'll be adding in the end. So I put that little equation on design plus creativity plus imagination equals value added. If you're adding value, you will always have a use and a place. So, COVID. We're learning a lot of lessons in COVID, which I think are directly relevant to this session. The first lesson, if you lived in Bangladesh or if you lived in Pakistan, you would know all about catastrophic events. They happen all the time: floods, storms, hurricanes, things that wipe out the way you live. Here in the Northern Hemisphere, we're not used to them. we might get a mild earthquake tremor that causes pandemonium, but so what? We get a bit of snow, it causes chaos, it goes. This COVID event, I think, has made me realise that catastrophic events actually can destroy the best established societies and economies overnight. And that to me is the lesson of COVID. Things that we used to take for granted, like we could just jump on a train, we could just travel where we want, when we want, we could go on a plane somewhere. All of those things that a year ago I was flying somewhere every week, I haven't flown since last March. I've had to do things differently. And my life has been turned upside down by COVID, as has many of yours. The fact we're having to work like this and improvise is a reflection of that. I also reflect that sometimes necessity is the mother of invention. And actually, we've been forced to do things differently. And I said at the beginning, I don't believe that universities anywhere will ever go back to where we left last March. I think we'll take the best of what we've learnt and the best of what we've had and make it into something that's very, very different and very modern and works better for you guys. And, I know that you all miss seeing each other. That all needs to be brought back. But I also know you can't stand getting for 9 o'clock lectures. So if we can do it this way, or you can watch it, that's got an absolute benefit. And for me, it means I don't have to commute, and it means if I am somewhere else in the world, I can still lecture. It makes no difference. So I think that's, but the time zones being the biggest problem. Organisational, so I've got, you can see the acronym down the side is COVID. So the next one is an organisational consideration. I talked early on, actually, the very first slide, about the economic models. And what we've very quickly seen is that our well-established and actually highly functional economic models became redundant overnight. And the government has had to start paying the wages of God knows how many million people to keep those jobs going. We've had to literally reinvent an economy in the space of 10 months. We've also had to reinvent our science base so we can do research into drugs that hopefully will be the way out of this damn disease. So again, we've had to totally transform the way we do things, forced upon us by COVID. And come back to my necessity is the mother of invention, and the mother of innovation as well. And it's just one for you to think about. I think I'm beginning to see now universities spend millions of pounds on buildings. Actually, virtual space such as Teams or Zoom or whatever is becoming just as, if not more important than physical space. Because in this pandemic, we can continue to work because we have the virtual digital connection. And I think if we all think this is bad now, can you imagine lockdown without FaceTime or without Zoom? That would be everyone's idea. That's how we've all kept humanity going. And it's second best, but my God, it's better than having nothing. My other two grandchildren down in Poole, I would not see without FaceTime because I can't go there. So, and all of you will share similar stories. Intervention. I classically, I'm not a great lover of government intervention. My preference is generally for small government, but I've come to realise that actually sometimes we need to intervene, because if something breaks, we've got to intervene to stop it breaking to shattering point. And that's where we are with the economy now. And what I've also learned is that we need to do things at local level. So governments themselves find it very difficult to do things. By working with mayors and working with communities, they can do a lot more. And if I give the example of inoculations, there's a fair amount of resistance in some ethnic communities about whether they should have an injection or not. It isn't the government that's going to change people's minds. It will only be the local community leaders that can persuade people that actually injections are a safe thing to do. So we have to work locally, and solutions will be at a local level, and there won't be one size fits all. There will be tailored solutions to achieve the same end, but in different ways, in different places at different times. And the other thing that I've become very clear on is that when things break, the market economy doesn't deliver. So social enterprise and social entrepreneurship have become even more important through this pandemic, and government knows that. So I think that to run a viable and successful social enterprise is going to be something in the future that is seen in the same esteem as running a commercial enterprise. That's just a thought for you. So on SuNSE, we too are using a canvas. The canvas we're using is slightly different. And you'll see when we go to the website that we've actually created a navigation system based around an identity line, a creativity line, a benefits line, a discovery line, a value line, marketing, blah, blah, blah. There are 9 segments there. And we've developed an online tool that's based on a navigation system. And if you actually can complete each of those blocks with what's in them, your canvas comes out of it. Now, you're using a slightly different canvas. And again, I'll show you the crossover in a minute. This is the navigation tool that you will see when you go online, and we've designed it with designs. I talked about design earlier on. We designed it based on the London Metro system, and we've got 2 main lines: the blue line, Piccadilly, and Circle. The Piccadilly line, forget the bottom, the northern side, the Piccadilly line, you've got sublines running off it. So you've got the District line, and you've got the Met line, and you've got the Central line, and you've got the Jubilee. You all know your line colours. And each of them has got a station on. And if you click on that station, it will take you to a video clip that talks about a theme. And when I show you the website, you'll see that. The bottom part down here is going to be the business line. We're working on that now, and that will be ready to use in about 8 weeks. But you don't need that at this stage. But if you want to turn your business idea, the canvas that you're doing for the competition, into a real live business by following the second part through, you will end up with a business plan that you can go to funders with. Okay. The whole purpose of it, it's hop on and hop off. I don't like linearity, although it looks like it's linear. You can open any of these in any way you want. You can go back to them, you can jump around them. I do think it's better to follow the lines as they are, but I'm not telling you have to do that. But if I would always start at the beginning and go up there. And the peak line, I want to say, is the activity line. So this is the activity that relates to the identity line. This is the activity that relates to creativity. The sum of those activities is what you drop into your canvas. There's always different ways of getting there. So here's your canvas. And now you can see how I've superimposed onto the top of that the SuNSE toolkit to enable you to use that to fill in the grids that you've got to fill in for the enterprise competition. Does that make sense? Okay, good. The next phase, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but this particular slide just shows you where we're going next with the business plan. And it actually, all of this lot here is the same principle as the other canvas, but this time it's more detailed financial planning, costing, looking at marketing, building a brand, all of those sorts of things that you have to put into a business plan in order to make it sustainable. So that's work in progress, but it will be there before you finish your course. So I now want to click. So I've got to tell me what I've got to do. I've got to click out. So I'm going to go back and actually run through SuNSE in a minute. But the real thing I want to say to all of you is the best way to do this now is to go to the website and to play with it. And it's pretty self-explanatory. I hope it is, because that's the purpose of it. But what you'll see on there is a journey. And that journey, the destination, is the canvas. And you go through the journey, doing the activities to create the canvas. And what you're needing to do for the social enterprise competition, actually everything is there for you to need. Now, I never expected to be using this with students as I'm using with you now. But talk about benefits, because this project that we're running for isolated and other regions, I can now use with students and give you something that I think will add real value to what you're doing as university students. And that is an amazing spin-off and benefit to me that I didn't really anticipate. I always hoped it might happen, but I hope now, because we can't meet up, I'm giving you something there that will enable you to put together actually a really fantastic canvas that will really, I think it'll, and I'm really interested to know whether you like this form of learning as well. I mean, I have to say this is quite a long session, and most people's attention spans are not the 1 hour that we schedule lectures in. These videos are all 3 and 4 minutes or less. And I know that in busy lives, there's so much you can learn in 4 minutes. And I learned that from using YouTube clips to learn to do things that I need to do. If I want to do something, learn to do a bit of editing, I don't know how to do it. I just go onto YouTube and say, how do I, and someone shows me. So, you know, and this is working in that same way. When you've done it, one of the things I am really keen to do is the very last station on the purple line, the terminus, the transit line, is just a 2-minute survey just to see whether it was useful to you and to get any comments you've got so that we can improve it in the future. So I would really appreciate if you do work through it, if you could just do that last one, because that's what is actually coming back to the research. So this will become the research, because we are now doing something. We will look at the impact it has, we will evaluate the way we've done it, and the research will be how can we improve it and share what we've done with others as well. Because I think that this way of learning has got massive opportunities for even some of your social. It may even be for some of you guys who are thinking, we want to help to educate in something or other. This approach might be the model that you can adapt to your way. You know, you create some digital content that you structure together, and suddenly you've got a learning package focused on something that you want to do. And I just think there's enormous opportunity there. Now, I am now going to gamble. So how, if I pull up, if I want to get this website up, how do I do it? So here we go. So a toolkit supporting social entrepreneurs. We're working in 3 languages on here because there are three nationalities involved in the project, but the YouTube puts into 40 languages. So this is what happens. You face this message as you click in. Let me just move that screen out the way a minute. And here it is. So if I click on now the identity line, click on this one, you'll see popping up making a social impact, and up pops a video.
Can't hear it.
Can't hear it.
Sorry,
No sound. Okay, don't worry about the sound. Can you see it?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can see it.
That's fine. You can see how it works. So let me now just click on that one. If acting like an entrepreneur, another video comes up. And if you click on the top one up here, the activities come up. So all of that's there. Okay, that's fine. I can see you now. So so you've got that toolkit down the bottom right. There's a couple of click-on buttons. You can download the a workbook that you can fill in as you go along as a PDF. There's a few instructions there if you lose your way. So you will all find your way around that. And if you can't, we haven't designed it well, because it's been designed to be used without a manual. Okay, and next week I'm going to focus much more on the actual content of what needs to go into the plan. But I wanted you to leave you with this week with the structuring your idea, thinking about what your idea is, why it's a good idea, who it's for, all of the things we've talked about. Next week it'll be much more about how do you turn that idea into something that really can work as a business.